Hello my crafty friends, it's Lesley Oman and welcome to another Hungry Heffy Crafts video tutorial. I have another baby boy card to share with you guys today. And in fact I made two of them because there's not many babies around. And this one has a fun interactive element. And I'll also be sharing how I created this soft picture book feel using some coloured pencils. I'm starting today with this owl from the Jump for Joy stamp set from Lawn Fawn. And I'm going to be stamping him onto some smooth white cardstock using Memento ink. And I'm also going to stamp this star-shaped balloon. That's from Avery Elle, the Ellie stamp set. And I'm going to be colouring these in with some Polychromos colouring pencils. The Polychromos are new to me. I've never used them before. And I thought that I would experiment on this card. And I wanted to try to create a soft storybook or picture book kind of feel to my card. So instead of colouring really heavy, pushing really heavy on my colouring pencils, instead I'm making little tiny dots or little tiny strokes using the point of my pencil. Now these Polychromos pencils, they're not as waxy as the other pencils I have, and so I can easily build up lots of different layers of the colour. And I think it really gives a soft finished feel to the image. Once I've added the colours of browns and greys onto my little owl, I'm coming back in with a darker coloured pencil. It's a black or a dark grey pencil, just to add a little bit of shadow into some of the corners of the stamped image. And that's just to add a little shadow and a little dimension to make him pop. For the balloon, I'm going to make that blue because this is a baby boy card today. And my little owl is going to be holding the balloon in his paw, well, in his wing. And once I have that coloured, I will darken up the eyes of the critter using my Sakura glaze pen, the black glaze pen. And I think this really makes their eyes pop. Now for the actual card, I've pulled out a few dies. The scalloped rectangle is from the All Prettied Up die collection from Mum Elephant. And then I've used the simple stitched hillside borders for the bottom section. And I'm going to move over now to creating a tree line on the back of my card. I'm using some mint Simon Says stamp ink for this. And the trees are from the Lovable Legends stamp set from Lawn Fawn. And once I've stamped this a couple of times, I'll clean my stamp, prep the surface, and then stamp the trees again right over the top with some clear embossing ink. This means that I can add some clear embossing powder and melt that until it is smooth and melted. I'm going to repeat that all the way along so I have a nice tree line. And with the emboss area, the clear embossing powder on top, this means whenever I go back in with my distress inks to colour the background, the distress ink will be resisted in those areas, so I won't get any ink there. So let's add some clouds now. This is from the Yay Kites set from Lawn Fawn as well. So I'm going to add 3 clouds along the top section of my card, and this time I will emboss this with white embossing powder just to make that pop. The card I'm using is a watercolour cardstock, so it's nice and thick, and the white pops against it. And also I find that the watercolour cardstock takes the distress inks really nicely. It's quite easy to blend on there. I added some tumbled glass and came back in with some broken china to build up a bit of colour along the tree line at the bottom, so it contrasts with my ground there. For the owl, I did some partial die cutting and left the area under his feet so that I could cut out a tab, a connected tab, and that will help me because of the slider mechanism. He will actually be connected to the slider mechanism, but underneath his feet. So I'm using the slide on over dies by Lawn Fawn and cutting a groove or a slot into my base panel, and I'm making sure that that is going to be hidden by my top layer of my card. I'm adding some Crackea Pistachio to this top layer, and I'm blending that into white the same way that I have done with the blue and the bottom layer. I think this will really help create that soft feel for my finished card. After the Crackea Pistachio, I'm just going to darken up that top edge with some Evergreen Bough. And then using some watered down gesso, I'll splatter my card just for a little bit of interest. I want to make sure that's nice and dry. And I decided then I would cut out another one of these owl die cuts and ink up this bottom section, the little tab where I'm going to stick my owl. This means that whenever I adhere the owl onto the card, it will blend in nicely with the background. Now for the actual slider mechanism, I'm not going to use foam, I'm using a piece of magnetic tape. I've just cut that into a little skinny rectangle and rounded off the edges. And using some glossy accents glue, I'm going to adhere that right onto the other side of my owl's feet, or underneath the feet, and put a piece of cardstock on the back. So now that will slide back and forth along that groove really nicely. I'm going to move over now to the stamped panel at the top. I'm using Congrats from the big scripty saying set from Lawn Fawn. And underneath I've pulled out a couple of stamps from a personal impressions stamp set to stamp It's a Boy. And I'm going to use some grey ink for this. This is the Slate ink from Simon Says Stamp. And I want it to read It's a Boy. So to bring that grey colour into the rest of my card, I'm stamping a couple of little love hearts from the Yay Kites stamp set onto the background. And now I'm going to cut out a little skinny frame using some of that darker grey card. First I'll cut it out using this scalloped rectangle die, and then going in again with the stitch rectangle die. So I have this really skinny frame that can be stuck all the way around. And I'll do the same for this top panel. Stick that in place. And then I can trim off the edges and adhere some foam tape onto the back of this top panel. Now you do need to make sure you don't put foam anywhere that is going to interfere with the slider mechanism. So let's test my little owl. Works good. So all I need to do is then finish off and put some final touches onto the card. I've added some Wink of Stella on the clouds to give it a nice glittery shimmer. And for the balloon, I'm adding a nice thick layer of glossy accents, which will dry glossy and clear and give a nice dimension to the card. I stuck the whole thing on using some foam tape. And now it means that whenever I bring a magnet to the back of my card, I can slide that across. Now I actually made this another time because there's more babies in our circle of friends. And in the second card, I used these really strong magnets that I bought from eBay. And I used that instead of the magnetic tape. So then I also put another one of these magnets inside a die cut tag. And that means I can move that back and forwards and move my little owl. And I love the way it has this really soft storybook, picture book kind of feel to the card. Here's some more of my videos which we think you might like. Please do take a look and click on them and have another adventure in Hungry Hippie Crafts. If you do like the video, please leave a like or leave a comment. It makes my day when you do that. See you later. Happy crafting. Bye.